Okay, we're gonna start. Hmm. Okay. Starting a little bit early. Mostly because I don't know, I didn't want to just like sit here and do nothing. Hey, I hope you are having a good day, whatever y'all are up to. Hope it's going well. For those of y'all who might be enjoying the summer, I hope you're having an enjoyable summer. We're just going to hang out and I'm going to draw some more Legend of Redneck and also do some coloring. We'll see what else we do. I've been pretty busy the last week or so because I picked up some freelance work that is interesting and enjoyable. Yo, the cursed one is here, says Lucas. You know, the curse lifted on Discord for some reason. I find that very mysterious. Um, so I've just been working a little bit more than I usually do, or lately. I don't know. When discussing my work schedule, I think for the last year and a half, no, not year and a half, last 3/4 of a year, I've been on kind of a more relaxed work schedule, and I've enjoyed it, but I've also found myself kind of twiddling my thumbs a bit, and so it's good to pick up a little bit of freelance work here and there. Lucas is currently doing some anthropology homework and analyzing the Barbie movie. That seems like a good movie to analyze for anthropology. I don't know why I say that. Um, I guess gender studies, maybe. I don't know. I actually haven't seen the movie. I watched a little bit of the first scene because it caught my attention because of the like very obvious 2001 A Space Odyssey reference at the beginning. Um, but that was all that I watched. I actually need to watch the whole movie at some point because people speak of it as a cultural event. I'm assuming it's good. I hear people say it's good. I'm sure I would enjoy it more than I enjoyed Oppenheimer because I did not care for that movie. Um, it's funny too because like I say it's funny. I don't know why it's funny, but I say this being kind of a Christopher Nolan fan. Like I've enjoyed a lot of his movies. And then like the last couple ones that came out that he's made have been a little bit of a stinker. Um, although I like Tenet the more that I watch it, even though that movie makes zero sense to me and is kind of uh, I don't know, it's kind of a turn your brain off movie. And like once I like realized, okay, I need to just turn my brain off and I'll enjoy it better. I enjoyed that movie a lot more. Oppenheimer though is like 3 hours long and doesn't need to be 3 hours long. That's what I think. Anyway, I'm saying all this because I need to check out the Barbie movie at some point because everybody I've talked to has watched it, enjoyed it. Lucas says that the school chose the Barbie movie. And then also says, I would have chosen the Five Nights at Freddy movie. I don't know why. That seems. I mean, anthropology is a broad field of study, right? It is the study of human behavior. In Five Nights at Freddy, I'm trying to figure out how I can, like, make something up here. Uh, no, I mean, like, Five Nights at Freddy is a study of isolation and its impact on the human psyche. And that's all I got. But that's how I would wing that one if I were doing Five Nights at Freddy. Um, that one seems a little trickier than the Barbie movie. The Barbie movie seems like a pretty easy pitch maybe. You know, you just you could even, I mean, heck, that opening scene, I feel like pretty much says so much, right? Because that opening scene is about like how girls were impacted by like the lack of toys available to them. Although I mean, let's be totally frank here. That opening sequence is just like it's just propaganda. It's just Barbie propaganda. Girls had plenty of toys to play with before Barbie. Um, but you know, people like their Barbie. I don't know. The merchandising movie. It is a thing of the present. There was a movie released not that long ago. Lucas just says, "Michael, don't leave me here." I'm assuming that's a Five Nights at Freddy's reference. I actually don't know that much about Five Nights at Freddy's. Verb says, I mean, in FNAF movie, there is parenting, kind of, and trauma stuff. I'm not sure what anthropology is about exactly, but something should fit. Yeah, I mean, I guess the best way I would define anthropology is if you study human behavior as somebody removed from it. Like, in the past, anthropology was considered a field of study done with quote unquote primitive societies. So, like, people from some quote unquote developed country, nation, whatever, would go out into the jungles or the savannah or wherever and study societies that, hadn't had a lot of interaction with the outside world. And so it was considered like a way of um, for people to kind of get an understanding of human development before technology or before the kind of rapid expansion of technology that we have today. And but really, ultimately, what that word means, when you really boil it down, is it just means the study of human behavior. And the study of human behavior from a holistic standpoint, not just like psychology, right, which is the study of human behavior on an individual level, or sociology, the study of human behavior on a social level, on a strictly social level, right? Like that's always kind of been my beef with sociology as a thing, is that it excludes it pretty much excludes the individual entirely, whereas something like psychology really does take into impact like what are the social impacts upon an individual. So anyway, anthropology generally likes to look at it from a both and perspective, and kind of will break down individuals into the role that they play in a society, but how does that role affect them as an individual, and how does their individuality affect the group, the social group, right? Whether that's a family or a friend group, or, depending on the structure of the society they live in, like a tribe, um, things. I don't know. that's kind of that's kind of what I got on anthropology. Um, Lucas says, I like to see it almost as if an alien is studying human societies. Yes, exactly. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, there is a certain aspect of you have to kind of remove yourself from the subject you're observing. Almost like if you were, what do they call that when somebody studies an animal or animals in the wild? Is it an ethnologist? I think it's an ethnologist. I can't remember. Um, but anyway, yeah, be kind of a fun job, I think. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't be fun to go out into, the wild and just like watch baboon tribes all day and like study how they interact with each other. And then, you have reports that you give back to your whoever you report to. I don't know, like the college, the academia, Nature magazine, what have you. I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily want to study baboons. I'm like kind of on the fence about primates. Uh, Leo says good afternoon. Good afternoon, Leo Empire. Hope all's going well with you. I do like to. I think I inherently, on some level, have adopted a standpoint in my life where, throughout my life, where I feel somewhat alien to society, and so have. I don't know. I think artists, on some level, most are most have an anthropological sort of life that they live when it comes to how they deal with people, where it's just like when your life is sort of centered around observing things, paying attention to them, having a semi-objective feedback rate, it does create a sort of sense of alienation where you go, okay, this is me, this is humanity. How do I fit in with this thing? Because I'm technically from it. There's not like an alien civilization I can escape back to. um, you know, and that might even be a kind of a common mindset, not just among artists, but among a lot of people, especially nowadays. I feel like now that society as a whole has become more and more fractured, and we're all kind of like in our own zone, so to speak. It's not like it used to be. It's different these days. I'm gonna in a second, I was gonna read something that Verb had posted in the Discord, in the Metaphysics Parlor. Okay. Verb says, now hear me out. It's time for Verb's random thoughts and rants again. Assuming time travel is possible, which I'd say it is, a plausible reason for it being known as not real / invented is because everyone who does invent it goes on some life-changing adventure across space-time, makes horrible decisions along the way, decides it's better not to do it after all, and subtly steers their pre-time travel self away from the invention, thus erasing the entire travel in adventure. Verb goes on to say, our time just flows differently than what most sci-fi media creators seem to think. Yeah, that's kind of a funny idea. I like that. Part of that, I kind of like that idea because the other implication of time travel is once it's invented, and I think this is why a lot of scientists think that time travel is impossible, it becomes such that so long as a person is alive, right, so long as their own relative time doesn't extinguish, they can kind of go to any time they want and mess with every single factor of existence should they have access to it. This is the thing. Here's the thing. In a lot of time travel movies, there's the assumption that space travel is also aligned with the time travel. The only story that I've ever really, been exposed to that I think actually stuck to the hardcore time part of time travel is the story of the time machine. And in that story, the machine that the inventor builds cannot travel through space. It's totally stationary. And so, as he's traveling through time, things actually happen to the area that he's like his time machine is like pinned down to, right? Like there's meteor crashes and there's a volcanic eruption. He goes to a part of like he goes to a point in this is in the book anyway by H.G. Wells. He goes to a point in time where like way, way, way in the future of Earth, where like the sun is turned into a red giant. He does all these things, but in the throughout the entire story, his machine can't move, and I think it gets like trapped behind something. I don't remember. Anyway, for some reason, I don't remember. I don't think it's mentioned in the book. There's a most of the movie adaptations they kind of glaze over this thing, this aspect of it, but for whatever reason, the time machine isn't impacted by events that go on in the space that it's traveling in. Like there's the one movie. I can't remember who plays the main character in that movie. It's like the one it was made in the aughts. I don't think it was Jude Law. It was somebody who I mistake with Jude Law all the time, and I can't remember his name. Anyway, in that movie, he's got like a little like force-filled time bubble around his machine, so that's like used as the excuse as to like why he doesn't get hurt or impacted by all the crap that's going on in the world around him while he's traveling through time. And I kind of think that would probably be technically more the case. Because, like, okay, let's look at a story like Back to the Future, right? Back to the Future's time travel mechanic is implicitly like linked to movement in space, right? Because you have to go 88 miles or 85, however many miles per hour, to like break the time barrier. And so there's inherently some amount of movement that takes place between the point of like breaking from one point in time to the next. Verb says, I could go into science details of theoretical time travel using infinite or exotic matter, but maybe sometime else. Okay. But, I personally think it makes more sense to me that if you're traveling through time, I don't know. I got to think on this one a bit. If you're traveling through time, you're technically also traveling through space. It's just space relative to the time you're traveling to. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if it makes sense to me while I'm saying it. I ain't a scientist. I ain't no chronologist. But I would say, like, for some reason, I always kind of think, like, all the time machines that get kind of popularized in modern media, the reason why they also travel through space simultaneously is that it's just convenient as a plot device, right? I'm trying to remember, like, in Doctor Who... Hold on, Verb said something here. Verb says, but mostly time travel would involve traveling through space, but often looking around or splitting into several copies of yourself. Oh, okay, I think I get what you're saying. I think that's also the reason why there are a lot of scientists who don't like the idea of time travel, because it also implies like you're breaking conservation of energy, right? Because you're like you probably would make a copy of yourself, because you would have yourself in the present before you travel through time, and then you'd have the self that is in the year 2555, right? So now you got two selves. How do you consolidate them? Because when you go back to the present, you're like, it's your copied self going back to the present. Verb says, remember that movement is bound to time by speed, too. Lucas says, gotta go. I can't concentrate here. I have attention problems and I'm focusing more on what you are saying rather than, yeah, that's fair, rather than the homework. Oh, good luck, Lucas. Um, sorry to distract you with confusing things that I don't even myself properly understand. Could one travel through time without a change in acceleration or velocity? That's the question we're here to answer today. Verb is implying, I don't know if Verb is necessarily saying this, but Verb is implying that you inherently have to change velocity in some sense in order to travel through time. Which makes sense, since time is by all, like in terms of how we use time as a thing, time is the function of measuring the difference between now and the next moment. But in order to actually record that difference, you have to experience some change, whether it's a change in motion. I mean, I guess it's all technically change in motion. So it's always like a change in motion, right? Which means an exchange of energy, which means, you got to do something. So even if your machine is sitting there in the same spot while it travels through time, it's still technically, I guess, accelerating. We don't have any, I don't know. I mean, so I think I get Verb's point more or less, where it's like you got to have some change in motion, in acceleration, in whatever, in order for your thing to go forward or backward in time. Even if it's technically sitting there or standing still. And this is kind of why, in a lot of ways, like, I kind of consider Doctor Who, like, I enjoy a lot of the Doctor Who series, but I kind of, in a lot of ways, consider it almost science fantasy, because it's very, very little, like, science-y stuff in Doctor Who, right? It's very, like, to put it in the verbiage of the David Tennant Doctor, it's very timey-wimey kind of absurdity, really. Just in the sense of, like, the TARDIS can go anywhere, any-when, right? It's just kind of like, at that point, you're not constricted by anything, not the least of which, issues in your script. Verb says, and then there is the dumb theory that time is a physical axis, which I don't like, but it's not impossible. Oh, you're talking about, like, three-dimensional time, I think. I suspect that's what you're talking about. I think that you would have to, on some level, conceptualize time on an axis of some sort in order to actually do anything with it other than what we currently do. Maybe, I ain't no chronologist, but Verb says no. He means something else. Like, not as a dimension. Because, like, the first thing that came to my mind when you said that was thinking about dimensions of time as, like, an x-axis, a y-axis, a z-axis, where you... Verb says, I meant that time could be actual physical movement, like walking. I'm not sure if I know what you mean by that. I meant that time could be actual physical movement, like walking. Oh no, we are on the same. We are saying the same thing. A fourth physical dimension. Although I think maybe you mean that time is a dimension separate from everything else. Right? Like you could cuz like as it's conceived currently, right? We have space-time technically. We don't have time, we don't have space, we have space-time because you can't have one without the other. It's a chicken and the egg kind of situation. Um yeah, I mean I'm kind of with you on that. That makes sense to me. Cuz like what is time without space? What do you? What, I mean, like, what are you measuring? You're not measuring anything. There's nothing moving. There's nothing to move. There's no change. You can't have change without space to change in. And what is space without time? Big nothing burger. It's just not even a still picture. Picture. Just there's nothing. You gotta have two. You gotta have the two. That's what I think I'm picking up here from what you're putting down. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I guess theoretically it's possible, but it's also sort of like, what would be the point? Like, what would be the point of time without anything else? And that opens up a lot of other interesting sort of things to think about. Because I'm not necessarily one of those people who goes into the like time is an illusion kind of thing. No, I mean time is real. I mean we experience it. It's as real as anything else. Um, However, the way that we experience time has illusory aspects to it that are largely cultural or societal because most of the ways that we experience or deal with time on a day-to-day basis has to do with our interactions with other people. I mean, would you have a clock if you knew you never had to worry about being on time for anything? Like you don't have school, you don't have work. You never like it's just you on a desert island. In fact, let's make this theoretical situation. It's you it's you on a desert planet that has no sunlight. Somehow you can survive. We don't worry about that aspect. Somehow you can survive, and you are able to, you know, you're able to like guide yourself through sound or whatever. Would you care about time? Verb says, frankly, I have no opinion on whether time is a thing or just a concept. Oh no, I'm just putting the idea out there. I'm just like, what is the use? I think that's the point that I was getting to is like, what what is the point of time outside of how we interact with other people? I guess memory, right? I don't know. Like, would it be important for me to keep track of my age if it was just me? Would I care? I don't know. So, anyway, if I invented time travel, I probably would do what Verb was originally postulating here, which is like I would go on a big adventure, make a bunch of mistakes, try and go like witness all these big historical events, and then realize like the just my presence there during those historical periods changes the course of everything through like very minute, influences on the time-space continuum. And then discover that even when I try and go back to the present, I've already changed everything. Every history I go to from that point on becomes an alternative history. And I'm no longer in the original timeline that I left. Dun, dun, dun. That's kind of been my conception of time travel, is like once you go traveling into time, you can't go back to where you came from. You've basically separated yourself from the timeline that you originally left. And that's my thesis on why time travel has not yet been invented. Because you can't go back home once you do that. Like you're just kind of stuck perpetually out in, what are essentially newly developed timelines. And you just keep going to newly developed timelines over and over again. And then, they exponentially get created here and there and there and there. And, and even though you might return to a timeline that is pretty much 100% a carbon copy of the one that you left, you're still returning. You still might find yourself returning to a present. I don't know. Maybe that's not a fully thought out idea. Leo Empire says, I mean, you can go back, but you'll just be going back. Like your trip would only be learning something about some other timeline. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you leave... Okay, so here's the other thing. Just you leaving a timeline has irrevocable impact on that timeline that can't be undone, right? Like you can't undo... Like once you leave... Even for like a split second, like a nanosecond. Like let's say you're just so good at time, you're like, I'm going to leave right here. And then when you come back, you're like, I'm going to come back right at the exact... You can't come back at the right exact same moment. You're always coming back like one tiny moment afterward. And that one tiny moment afterward is going to have an impact. It's going to create a void in the space-time continuum that the rest of the universe has to make up for, probably through entropy. I don't know. I'm just making things up. Look, that's kind of how I think about time travel a lot. Is like, it's got to be an incredibly wild amount of energy that you have to use, and then you're using a wild amount of energy. And then, like, taking it out of the universe. Leo Empire says temporal vacuum. Yeah, I just feel like, there might be some kind of weird temporal greenhouse effect. Maybe that is what the accelerating expansion of the universe is caused by. Is you get all these people somewhere else, or in Earth's present time, who knows? Time traveling, and it's just like exponentiating this acceleration of stuff. Anyway, Leo Empire says it turns into a temporal backdraft. Gotta call the temporal fire department. Exactly. Exactly. And I was gonna use that to explain some other weird phenomenon. And that's how ball lightning is made. We experience it as ball lightning, but it's actually just like the temporal fire department showed up to take care of a situation and make sure things are under control as best as possible. Temporal backdraft. uh, this is why I haven't written a time travel story yet. Verb says, like I said, infinite or non-existent matter would be necessary. So there's got to be, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. Am I going to be the one to invent time travel? Hell no. That's not me. Unless I like accidentally stumble upon it. I just like accidentally push the wrong combination or maybe the right combination of things into a supercomputer and like I don't know, some Rube Goldberg machine like suddenly like makes a time machine and I kind of like stumble into it all stoned out. Leo Empire says can't divide by 0 if there's no 0. Leo Empire asks, what do you think dreaming is? Do you want a serious answer or like a or Matt Rainwater answer? I mean, I'll start with a serious answer. Um, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I do kind of wonder if dreaming is like the experience of alternate timelines. Um, I have had I have had a couple of dreams that are just like, oh, that's really spooky and like sort of weirdly predictive. Um, I do think dreams do have like a functional use that isn't just like, oh, it's random firings of neurons. Like I think it's a little bit more than that. Verb says something I want to do, but it's hard. Leo Empire says yes. But yeah, I mean, I do think there's something to dreams that's a little more than just like random firings of neurons or whatever. Like I think there is I do think there's like kind of a spooky functional thing going on with it. It depends on how deep you want to get into that rabbit hole because like that gets into Stanford research stuff and MK Ultra and psychic phenomena and all that other stuff, which I always it's a topic I find fascinating and interesting, but like not a topic you can necessarily broach a dinner conversation with because I don't know, people get weirded out by psychic stuff. I love that stuff just as like a you know the same way that I love like cryptid stuff like Bigfoot and Loch Ness monster. Like I don't believe in it, but it's interesting and kind of curious. Um, like there's a book I read a year or two back by Annie Jacobson, and she's done. I mean, like her whole shtick is like weird government program stuff. But she did a book about the Stanford Research Institute project, um, like that was tied in with MK Ultra and like um, the Monroe Institute, the Montauk Project, all this other stuff. Anyway, very fascinating in terms of like what was the history behind those projects, what were the what was the point behind that project? Because the whole reason funding was even poured into it was just because the CIA was really worried that the Soviet Union had like a psychic army or was building a psychic army. And the Soviet Union was really worried that the CIA or the USA had like a psychic army. So they were like just kind of doing like a weird arms race with each other over like, oh, here's the weird psychic stuff we're doing. And then the Soviet Union's like, well, here's the weird, they didn't call it psychic. What did they call it? Was it Cytronic or something like that? Anyway, here's the weird Cytronic stuff we're doing, and then they just kind of go back and forth and back and forth. Leo Emperor says, I like to just throw it out and people uh, get the out of assuming I'm joking. Well, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe I should just open up more conversations with that kind of stuff. Because that would kind of help me find people who are like my friends. Like, what is their level of tolerance to weird woo? Like, you know, uh, like, hey, UFOs? Yeah, you want to talk about UFOs? And when you do meet, I don't know, you got to be careful with that stuff too, though, because when you meet somebody who's like a little too into it, that can be an issue. Um, when you start getting into like hardcore conspiracy territory and all that. But anyway, so yeah, I wish I could remember what the name of that book was. I didn't quite finish it, but it was a good um, it was a good synopsis of the history of psychic research going back to the 1920s or even a little earlier. Because as it turns out, the beginnings of that sort of started around, what was it, like early 1900s, late 1800s, sort of when the spiritualist movement was starting. So, here's the like TLDR on that. So basically, early 1900s, a bunch of rich people were super into like spooky stuff, right? Because they're rich and bored and they don't really have anything else to do. So it's like, oh, let's learn about astrology and like tarot and like let's speak with our dead ancestors and whatever. Anyway, I guess that's what you do when you're rich. I wouldn't know personally. But anyway, so there were scientists who got involved with that group, those kinds of groups, and they actually like started putting some effort into going like, okay, well, how could we evidentially prove this? Because also at the time, there were a lot of people who were taking advantage of rich people by being like, oh yeah, I'll help you talk to your dead relatives, and then they were just pulling their leg and using a bunch of like parlor tricks and stuff to convince rich people that they were actually talking to their ancestors and whatever. So I don't think I don't think any scientists from that period. I don't know. I'm just gonna say there was one scientist whose name I can't remember. I think it's like Putov, I think. He started doing some research into psychic experiences, and that ended up leading to what is called the Stanford Research, or no, this project funded by the Stanford Research Institute that was like an investigation into psychic studies, right? Now, that didn't really take off until much later when when the CIA was created and they wanted to find all these weird like what are new tactics we could develop to deal with the Soviet Union, because we need to like we're gonna throw everything at the wall. We don't want to go to nuclear war, so we're gonna have to just like, can we communicate with people without having to use wires? Can we communicate with people without having to use like radio signals? Stuff like that. And so from there on came the psychic arms race. Now, did it go anywhere? I mean, it doesn't seem like it. I don't know. I mean, I've had a lot of unusual occurrences in my life. I don't know if I would ever call any of them. I would call many of them intuitive, but not necessarily psychic. And when I say that, that means that I feel like I have explanations for the event that do not require the development of some whole new mechanic of reality, right? Like some kind of like psychic perception or whatever. I don't know. I forgot what I was going to go with that topic. Anyway, I would kind of like to do a story at some point in the future that was kind of psychics stuff. Uh, I guess I say this as being somebody who's been a big fan of Akira, which is like one of the like preeminent stories involving psychics. Um, Although that's like a whole other level of psychic. That's like I don't know what you call that, like super psychics. Where at that point it's like all psychokinesis and I mean it's essentially magic, right? At that point. Anyway, I wouldn't mind doing a story like that. I think that would be kind of fun. I think what I like about that kind of topic is you can do kind of spooky stuff. Um, there's a lot of interesting sort of material that I read in my days that would give me inspiration for some ideas dealing with that. But haven't yet. Haven't yet had like the idea that would lead to a story. Oh, Leo's responding to what I was saying earlier about like you got to be careful when you introduce those topics to. Leo says, "Yeah, that's the danger." Then I get the out of saying, "I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm just joking." I wasn't for real, man. It's it's tricky, right? It's tricky because I don't know, when you're somebody who's interested in sort of like paranormal topics, you want to find people who are into that stuff, but then you got to be really careful because the nature of that subject does create a lot of isolation in a lot of people, and that isolation can breed sort of a kooky psychology, right? I mean, I think the main issue is for a lot of people who really get into paranormal stuff, they get sort of a chip on their shoulder of like, I know it's real, I can prove it's real. All these other people who don't believe in it, they're fools. And it's like, well, I mean, look, if you're a research scientist and you have like substantial evidence, that's one thing. But if you're just some like random jackass on the internet who watched YouTube videos and like convinced yourself, that's a whole other thing. Um, and I mean, to be fair, also there is some amount of evidence that like a lot of that stuff gets covered up, or like I don't know. There's some funky stuff that happens with a lot of those kinds of research, and part of it is because it is it's a hard pill to swallow. It's a hard subject to broach with the scientific community, which I think it's fair. That's a hard subject to broach. Um, because the implications of like a lot of that stuff. Not so much. It's funny though. UFOs lately have become more and more, and I'm kind of suspicious of this a little bit actually. UFOs are more and more like becoming this like dinner conversation thing, almost like how it was in the '90s. And I don't know what I think about that sometimes. Like okay, because it's that time of the stream where I wax on about like when I was a child. There was a time in the 90s, and I'm going to make this lead into Trailer Park Warlock somehow, because a lot of the inspiration for Trailer Park Warlock is like things from the 90s. In the 90s, this is about 90, between 92 and 94, I want to say, like right up until 1995 when everything became dinosaurs. There was a period of time where we'll just say the media in general was obsessed with UFOs, and people were having all these UFO sightings that were like recorded on like camcorder, and the usual sort of like like can't properly track the UFO. It's really fuzzy, and then you also had videos that were clearly like just bad special effects, And then you had some videos where like, oh, okay, that video kind of seems convincing. I don't know what's going on there. But also, in concert with that was the crop circle phenomenon. Crop circles are pretty... I mean, I think Occam's razor has a pretty easy explanation for that one. You can... A lot of those you can... A person can do them. Or a team of people can do them. They're easy to replicate, most of them. But this was all, this was all happening around the same time, and people were just like, it was a big topic of conversation, and even among like intellectuals, because you had researchers who were looking into this, trying to figure out like, okay, what is this phenomenon? Which to me implies like there was probably something there. What it was, who can say? But anyway, going back to what I was trying to say here, all this was happening during the 90s, and so like that led to one of my favorite television shows ever growing up. I don't know if I would still like it today. I'd have to go back and watch it, but I think I might, which was The X-Files. So, those unfamiliar with The X-Files, basic premise follows two FBI agents who, do investigations into the paranormal. Although a lot of times they're just like, a lot of the investigations they do are just like pretty run-of-the-mill, like murder mystery kind of stuff. But then they turn paranormal because then there's like, oh, there's these weird details, like, it would require some kind of extraordinary thing for this person to have died this way, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, X-Files kind of became like this showcase of like all these paranormal different like topics that people would talk about. Cryptozoological stuff like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster. There's an episode of the X-Files that still lingers in my memory that was like this weird worm man who, like, I don't know, escaped from a prison or something and like got into the sewer lines and was like murdering people through the toilets or something. I don't remember how it worked. It didn't make any sense. But it scared me as a child. It actually made me scared to go to the bathroom as a child because I was thinking about like, oh, the weird worm man might be in the toilet. But the biggest topic on that show was UFOs and aliens, and that was like a running theme because there was this whole like seasons long arc about an alien takeover and government conspiracies and blah blah blah. Anyway, not important. Anyhow, X-Files was a big influence on the characters of Mason Mila and Mason Douglas. As I would also say, pretty big influence on just the general paranormal slant of Trailer Park Warlock, because something I did want to capture in that story was sort of the eerie, new agey atmosphere of the 1990s, but particularly like early 1990s. I don't know what was in the drinking water, but anyway, I wouldn't necessarily say throughout the entire 90s, but through a big bunch of the 90s, there was in the United States there was a lot of like cults that popped up, like the Heaven's Gate cult, um, the Branch Davidian cult. There was a bunch of other cults that I can't. Oh, what are they called? The Raelians. I forgot about the Raelians. The Raelians, I think their whole shtick was. Let's see if I can remember this properly. This was around the time that cloning got first invented. So there was a news story about a team that cloned a sheep named Dolly, and this group got founded called the Raelians. If I remember correct, I might be mixing them up with somebody else. Who were like, we're going. I think they were just gonna clone. I don't remember. They're cloning something. They're either cloning themselves to live forever, or like I don't quite remember. They were gonna clone their founder so he would live forever. It was really weird. Um, Everything was about cloning. So anyway, if people want to know why Trailer Park Warlock is the way that it is, I refer you to the 90s. Because that's where all my weirdness comes from. It comes from growing up in the 90s. Because they were a weird frickin' time. It was fun, but it was weird. I think that deserves being said. Is like, as much as I'm saying all the weird things that I'm saying is actually pretty fun. I mean, being a kid and I don't know what it was like being an adult in the 90s. I guess I mean, I don't know. I kind of suspect it must have been very boring to be an adult in the 90s. Um, which is why people were like spending a lot of time getting into like UFOs and stuff like that because they were just like didn't have much else to do. I guess you could watch football. Um, oh, you're ready for some football? Or like go bowling, listen to country music. Listen to Achy Breaky Heart like for the umpteenth time. You could play Risk on the computer. You could go on the internet. Actually, I suspect the internet kind of rocked in the 90s. I mean, I know that it rocked in the late 90s because I was there for that part, but like the early 90s, the internet was in existence and it wasn't yet popularized, so I didn't really know anything about it, and it had only been like its only real presence in my life was just in random bits of fiction like The Lawnmower Man or like Hackers or um, Reboot, you know. But it didn't become like a fully formed thing in my life until 1998, maybe 97. And even then, it was only, I mean, it was 56K, so like, God help you. You were not on the internet very long, if at all. It's actually, I was kind of recalling this with a family member recently because back during that time when you went on the internet, it really felt like you were invoking, like it was almost ceremonial, where it was like, Mother, Father, I'm going on the internet to do research on my Pokemon trading card game deck. Don't ask for me. I will not be giving you back the phone anytime soon. And, you had to schedule time out. Like, the whole family's access to their phone was going to be taken away from them so that you could go on the internet to do your whatever, right? To do your, go to your Pokemon trading card game forum. I mean, that's literally all I did when I was a kid. Or go on game FAQs, maybe. Sometimes I would go on game FAQs. Um, but that was for maybe, at most, 1 hour a day. One hour. 1 hour of internet if you're lucky. And this wasn't like, this wasn't like the era of YouTube. Nobody was watching videos. Nobody was like playing games. You were going on the internet to do serious work, serious research, or to chat with like your, I don't know, I guess your D&D group or whatever. And now it's everywhere. Now I can't get away from the damn thing. Everything is the internet. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I like this. Like, I can talk to y'all. Leo Empire says chat rooms and gift sites, and eventually MMOs. Ah, the gift site. Verb says I cannot fathom what that was like. You don't want to. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. Like, in the same sense, I can't fathom what it's like to grow up without having that experience. Like, I can't fathom what it's like to grow up with just high-speed internet on the scene, you know? I mean, for me, like, getting into the age of high-speed internet was the slow, excruciating, arduous wait for just one day, I'll be able to afford internet that will allow me to just watch YouTube without a problem, or download videos or games or whatever. Like, that was, I mean, for me personally, it's different for everybody because it just depends on like how their family felt about the importance of the internet in their lives. My family did not. I don't know. My mom is a very financially shrewd woman, and she did not think that anything above 56K was necessary for like the longest time. And it required basically like an act of Congress to get her to get on board with something faster. Like, I didn't get faster internet until I went to college. So I went from 6th grade to, yeah, I mean, 6th grade all the way until senior year of high school, just chugging along on 56K. Like, when I went to school, I would have access to faster internet, and that was cool. But, like, or if I went to a friend's house, I would, like, bum their internet, but, that was it. Because there was a point where a lot of my friends had, like, DSL or, some kind of faster option. And so, I would frequently go to my friend's house and be like, "Hey, can I like use your internet for a second? Because I want to like look at this gaming website that I read pretty frequently, so I can keep up with the console wars and you know stupid stupid stuff." Um, I need to change something here. But that was the day and age that I lived in. Leo Empire says, imagine doing a Google search with the word GIF, but it takes several minutes for one to load. So you gradually get more GIFs loaded as time goes on. uh, Verb says, I kind of wish it didn't progress so fast, to be fair. All those 500 gigabyte games wouldn't exist, and I'm sure the limitations would make the gaming industry better. I did say GIF, Verb. I can say GIF, it'll make you happy, but I'd be lying. I actually say both. I usually say, sometimes I like to say GIF, sometimes I like to say GIF. It depends on how I feel. That is that is honestly probably the biggest controversy of the internet, even to this day. I mean, it's actually kind of fascinating that nowadays we like talk to each other in GIFs. Um, Whereas in the in the old and in the long ago, GIFs were what we looked at in GIFs were what we looked at on the internet to forego watching actual video. Leo Empire says you can still have those. Palmer Lucky wants to have, or no, yeah, Palmer Lucky wants that to happen, allowing people to make new Game Boy games for his new handheld. Interesting. Verb says, fun fact, there's a Spelljammer race GIF who have civil wars about pronunciation. Leo Empire says, we used to talk to each other in acronyms. Oh, yeah, almost entirely in acronyms. Well, JK. I mean, people still kind of do that. But I have noticed it's kind of, it has kind of tapered away. Maybe that's what makes me a millennial, is that LOL is still a thing that I use from time to time. Because I don't think later generations really use LOL. Not in the same way. Doesn't seem like it. I never really thought about that. I mean, somebody's going to have to keep track of the history of the internet, right? I mean, some people are. It's a very big, long, sordid history, and knowing Leo Empire personally, I know that both him and I have experienced entire eons of internet culture that have come and gone. I don't know how to make sense of the current eon. I'm not like a big, huge fan of it, like the social media eon. It's kind of, I'm kind of ready for it to be over, to be quite frank. Although I do really like Discord, so Verb says this is in reference to Leo Empire's earlier comment about the Game Boy or the handheld thing. Verb says, yeah, I've seen that. Pico B exists too. I'm collecting refreshed retro gaming things as much as I can afford. I have the new Mario game and watch. It's really cool. Gonna buy the Zelda one too soon too. I mean, I think okay. Going back to what I was kind of talking about, this current aeon of the internet, I'm of two minds about it. my main issue with it is that it is so fractured, chaotic, and at times contemptuous, largely due to the fact that it's not like everybody's on board, right? And I mean, you want everybody to be catered to, obviously, but it's the fact that we've gone through this period of like basically the entire human race has intermingled now, and there's a lot of stuff a lot of people disagree about all the time. They don't know how to get along with each other, and they didn't grow up with the internet in the fashion that like my generation did, which was we all sort of cautiously came onto the scene and sort of experienced each other as like new entities, right? As like, oh, you're like me and I'm like you. We're just human beings trying to figure out this new technology. And now like everybody's kind of just like, oh, well, we're used to it, and there's not that sense of wonder and curiosity as much. Now it's just like people trying to figure out how to get things out of each other a lot of the time. Which is sad, I find, because like I think I've spoken with this with another member of the Discord group a fair amount, which is that early internet culture was one of like open, wild-eyed curiosity, a willingness and tolerance to just people's weirdness and just strangeness, um, a sense of playfulness, and a lack of seriousness. Just like everything was for fun, everything was silly, everything was like good ammo for a good joke. And now like it's not the same way so much nowadays. Not so much. I try and keep it that way. Wherever I exist on the internet, I try and keep it that way as much as I can. Although I certainly have my own, what you call it, like, I'll just say my philosophical edge, right? Like I have my philosophical edge, but that I always try and keep it sort of smarmy and goofy because I don't think philosophy is any fun if you're not having like philosophy is just stupid if you're not having fun with it. It's concepts and ideas, and you should like that's a playground to play in and have fun in, and in that playfulness you find the concepts and ideas that help you build your life and build like the concepts that gird your life and allow you to go forth, right? And do whatever it is you're going to do, weirdo, right? Like that's kind of my attitude about stuff. And not everybody feels that way. Not that that's any different from how things were in the 90s necessarily, but in the 90s you could separate yourself from the very inflexible, rude people by going on the internet. Now it's the exact opposite. That's what's so weird. It's like it's totally the opposite in so many ways. Although Leo Empire would probably say that's different if you go on VR chat where the old internet lives. Because he's something of an evangelist for the virtual reality. Which I have yet to find myself willing enough to make that leap. But he's all in. And I know he's all in because I see him get on VR chat all the time on my Steam account. uh, and also of the many tales he's told me. But anyway. So I should amend my statements and say there are corners of the internet that hold that old ethos of the old internet. I'm trying to uphold them as best as I can in my own little corner. You have other people who are doing the same. Verb says, my friends often go around VR chat servers singing shanties. That's fun. Leo Empire says, Black Friday this year, I suspect Quest 2 might get south of $100. Oh, that's pretty good. I need a VR headset that's cheap that has nothing to do with Meta. If that's possible... This is part of a long, ongoing conversation I've been having with Leo Empire about when I'm going to buy a VR headset. Like like he's the personal negotiator for the entire VR world. And I've just been slowly haggling the VR world. Like, I'll get on board when it's costs this much. I don't know. I'll get on board when it costs this much. I'll get on board. Who knows when that's going to be. I need to, I guess I need to, that I feel like that point's going to come one day. I feel like on some level it may be inevitable. I don't know. I have to admit that I've been resisting the VR transition rather mightily. Leo Empire says, though everybody... Oh, wait. Leo Empire says, man, they subsidize the hell out of that and hemorrhage millions every year. No one is going to be able to beat that. Though everybody does clearance. We'll see. Okay. I get your point, Leo. The thing is, and maybe we've talked about this in the past, maybe we haven't, but like the transition to the internet age was built off of piles and piles and piles of America Online CDs. And they were giving that crap away for free. For free. Right? That was a decade of America Online just sacking their company. Just basically going, we're going to take one for the team to make this happen. Belligerently just pummeling people's doorsteps with these CDs up until the point that nobody even had CDs anymore. And so I do kind of have to wonder, will the VR transition be possible without some kind of, maybe Meta might have to be the one to take that L for the team and just be like, you know what? Free headsets, since none of y'all want to buy these damn things. Although I think they do turn some amount of profit on it. I don't know how much. But you get my point. Like, it's just... technological transitions don't really happen that easily. I mean, it's actually kind of weird that smartphones made the leap that they did as quickly as they did. No, that's not true, because they were free as part of a lot of cell packages. So, this kind of further reiterates my point. Nobody wants to embrace new technology. Leo Empire says it'll be like the iPhone spreading. Yeah, I can believe that, actually. The iPhone took a bit. I mean, I don't know. It's not like it wasn't unpopular when it first came out, but it did take a second. And I don't know if the iPhone would have worked without also like the iPad, or not the iPad, the iPod previous to it. Oh, the iPod. an entire device for just listening to things. And now we all have iPods, basically. Like all our phones are iPods, as well as many other things. Like our phones can kind of be anything we want them to be nowadays, except for VR headsets, currently. See that? Okay. That's my speculation right now is the VR shift probably isn't going to happen until somebody can figure out how to incorporate a headset type functionality into a phone, since the major technological purchase that most people are willing to make every 3 to 5 years has to be a new phone, right? Verb says it's been going on for years, dude. How so? Tell me more. Verb says cardboard boxes you put on your head, apps that make your phone work kind of like a headset screen. Okay. I mean, as you're describing it right now, this sort of sound like what do you call it? Like halfway, like getting halfway there, but not like the full headset experience. Although I guess that's something. Like I mean, it's not impossible to do. Verb says I played a VR Dino roller coaster on my phone like 7 years ago. Did you find the experience immersive, or did you find the experience to be like just putting your phone right up against your eyes? Because I feel like that's a little bit different from using a headset, which is a very like incorporates your entire field of vision in an extremely immersive way. Like I find that to be a technical difference in my mind. But that's me. Because, I mean, I could technically do that right now, right? I could just, like, do this and just walk around like this, right? But that's not quite the same thing as wearing a headset. And I haven't had that many experiences wearing a headset, but the ones that I have had wearing a headset, it's notably different. Like, you're wearing a headset versus, like, having like, putting your face up against the, like, computer screen. Like, those are two totally different things in my mind. Leo Empire says, no, we're not there. You need retinal resolution, 120 FPS in 5,000 nits, whatever those are, to get beyond the enthusiasts. Then you need to have 180 FOV, and the HMD has to weigh like 10 grams. Verb says, humans don't even have 180 FOV. But we need them. We need them, Verb. Not just 180. Give me 200. I'll bid you up. 250. Give me 250 FOV. 300. 300 FOV. Or get out. $380. Oh, I need to do something on this panel. I didn't. Kind of goofed something. I can erase that layer. All right. Leo Empires. Oh, wait. Hold on. So okay, FOV versus or 120 FPS. FPS I understand, 120 frames per second. FOV I don't quite understand. exactly what the terminology means, but I'm assuming it's similar to FPS. William Empire says, I think Apple has the right idea. Focus on monitor replacement. William Empire says, mixed reality is cool. Everyone just needs to evolve powerful neck muscles. Yeah, I think it's just and I think it's really just a matter of time. Who can say how much time before everybody has sort of like their pocket headset, or we just forego the headset thing entirely and skip over to like holodeck type stuff. I don't know. I have found it curious how slowly, like, it's been a pretty slow adoption of VR. Like, there are people who are all in, right? And then there are people who are like me, who are just like obstinately just like, I'm not doing it until this happens. And then there's never a point at which I'm satisfied. There's never a point at which I'm satisfied until somebody just gives me a headset. And even then, it's gonna lay on the floor. I'm gonna kick it around, and then one day I'm gonna be like, oh, I guess I'll check out this thing. Leo Empire says FOV stands for field of view. Verb says maybe some sort of AR monocle with BCI. So I don't know what I was going to say. I'm going to see what else is saying. People are saying. Leo Empire says, I'd love to see AR. And for those who don't know, AR is augmented reality. But the nit problem becomes even worse. When I was referring to nits before, that was how bright you could make the display. Right, like there's always going to be, it's not going to be as immersive as like virtual reality, where it's pretty easy to feel like you're there in the space. Um, Whereas with augmented reality, there's always kind of a remove, which I could see kind of taking you out of it a bit. But maybe that's okay. I don't know. Like, what if everybody you interacted with was like Star Wars holograms? I don't know if I'd mind that. But maybe that isn't the same thing as like, as I've heard. That would seem like a very different experience from the immersive quality of virtual reality where you can almost feel people's presence. So going back to augmented reality, we're talking about brightness of the display. Verb says, I hate bright screens. Leo Empire says, it's not a screen at retinal resolution. It's what your eyes are seeing now. But with AR, you're competing with the sun. And nobody outcompetes the sun. It's like Pizza Hut. Nobody outpizzas the hut. Nobody outsuns the sun. You can't do it. Except for a bigger sun. Or an exploding star. I don't think you can outcompete an exploding star. I'm not sure. All right, we're almost done with the stream here, but I'm finding this to be an entertaining topic, especially because I'm such an obstinate jackass when it comes to adopting virtual reality. Not even for really a good reason. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's a good reason. Maybe it's not. I think once I get a bigger space, I might feel more up to it. Verb says, I do hate sun too. I like the sun. I like it. I mean, I have my limits. Living in the South where the sun will like brutally murder you, sometimes I find myself having, a complicated relationship with the sun. Leo Empire says it's funny because Sony is trying to throw a 5 or 50,000 nit HMD, which might be enough for OLED on silicon, but that's something we can't do on glass. But mixed reality is cool. I feel like I like the idea of mixed reality. I think it's because I have a bias for the space that I already occupy. And I like the idea of that space being filled up. I don't. This might have to do with my own experiences with certain mind altering states, but there might. I kind of think maybe there is some aspect of like. I don't know how I feel about entering into another reality, but I don't mind the idea of another reality entering into mine. He said as he summoned a Lovecraftian horror. Verb says, I'm like Doofenshmirtz's mentor. Wanna burn the sun. Oh. Not a fan. Not a fan of the sun. Yeah, I think that's what it. I'm probably like. I'm more into the idea of like Leo Empire or Verb or whoever randomly entering my space unannounced than me randomly entering into their space unannounced. Or I guess that's the advantage of virtual reality, right? It's like everybody can agree upon when they enter into each other's space. Whereas when you have augmented reality, there's a certain amount of. That's actually philosophically interesting. So, like, the interesting thing about VR is that everybody has an agreed upon space that they agree upon entering, right? AR, if you go the long route of it, sort of implies like now you have to negotiate on how people use your space and how you use their space. Leo Empire says, that's an interesting thought. I might be inclined to agree. We'll have to see what kind of AR apps people come up with. Right now, it's very benign. Leo Empire says, even in AR, I'm pretty sure you can still put yourself on orange. Well, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it's like Ghost in the Shell, right? You can go on autistic mode and just like get off the net, right? I'm sure that will always be a thing. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't. I've been trying to observe what is my hang up about virtual reality, and I still can't really figure it out. I think part of it is my own like fatigue with involving myself with electronics in screens. And so if there was some way of removing that aspect, I don't know, that's impossible, but like basically if virtual reality was like psychic space and I could just close my eyes and enter that space, that might be different. Verb, my friend is collaborating in an AR project. It's a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game, though. Leo Empire says, you know what's cool? You have things in your display that are further away than your walls, and you see them clearly. It's surreal. Retinal resolution. That's number one, in my opinion. This stream has turned into convince Matt Rainwater to get onto VR. Maybe that's what maybe that's what maybe that's what we're gonna do from now on. Every time I like get towards the end of the stream is like, let's find new ways to convince Matt Rainwater to get onto a stream, get onto VR. uh, like Leo Emperor says, I'm sorry, I love that stuff. No, that's fine. I mean, I don't have a reason. I don't have like a rational reason to not like it necessarily, other than just like a sense of technological fatigue that I've been dealing with lately. I've really noticed it pretty intensely the last year. Like I've just been like really wanting to spend a lot of time touching grass, and and I don't know, for whatever reason my hippie Taoist bones need that for some reason. The idea of going on VR just seems like, oh, that's getting further away from the grass I want to touch. Verb, I have things that are further away than my walls on my PC screen too. But checkmate, atheist. Verb says, but yes, I'd love to play some things on VR. Superliminal would be awesome and super hot. And I should stop saying random names without context. Well, I'm aware of. I think I'm also. I think I've heard of. I know I've heard of Super Hot. I haven't. If Superliminal is the game I think it is, where it's like, you can like change the size of objects and stuff, and it seemed like kind of a cool game, but I might be thinking of a different one. But no, I think that's it. It's just like when I'm not working, I'm trying to maximize my time in IRL. And so VR feels like, but VR is weird because it is kind of IRL too, because you are you're like living with real people. Leo Empire says that's fair. Sometimes you need it, but in my opinion, those things aren't in the same category. At least how I use VRC, VR chat. I'm walking around and talking and not looking at screens, even though I'm literally staring at a screen. Verb says, I told you about Super Hot right here on a stream. That's correct. Leo Empire says, VR is my third space. VR could probably become one of my third spaces. It probably could. I need to find like a day, like a VR day. Like today's going to be my VR day. And then I put on my Nintendo Power Glove in my headset. In my members only jacket. I was trying to figure out what the name of that was. And then my talking dog. And we go into VR. Maybe one day. Okay. I think we're going to hang up the stream for now. My nose is so... Whenever I stream, this nostril gets itchy. What is that? Like, what is that? William Empire says, I'd love to see someone put trackers on a Power Glove and it'll work like in The Wizard. That's what I want. That's the next thing I want before I get onto VR. I'll just keep negotiating until I get everything that I want, and then I'll be happy. All right. I will talk to y'all later. It's been fun. Yeah, I've got a streaming allergy, Verb. I don't know why. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.